All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Lure Lab episode here on the Serious Angler Network. And we're starting off 2024 with a bang, right? Like you get all of the Serious Angler hosts in back-to-back weeks here on the Lure Lab. And today is no other, but we have Justin Largen joining us, who is the co-host on the Kayak Fishing Weekly show here on the Serious Angler Network. And we're going to be diving into the Missile Baits D-Bomb and all the ways you can rig it, all the ways and where to fish it, maybe even use it as a trailer. So we're going to dive deep into all of that here with Justin here shortly. I just want to say I hope everyone's staying safe. We've had a ton of crazy weather going on all across the United States, blizzards, tornadoes, etc. Hope everyone's staying safe and enjoying the new year. But without me rambling too much, let's get Justin on here. Hey man, how's it going?
Good, Andy. How are you?
No, not bad. It's good to have you on here the first time. I know you recently joined the network, right? With the Kayak
Yeah,
Fishing Weekly. So like how's that going over there? I'll be honest, I haven't listened to a single episode because I don't kayak fish. And I'm a
no worries.
horrible listener of podcasts, so I just kind of stay in my own world and do my own thing. But how's everything been?
I'm enjoying it. I'm new to the podcasting game. I know, you guys know what you're doing. Bailey's a veteran, so I'm just
Yeah.
kind of riding his coattails, trying to learn it right now.
Yeah.
It's it was his, I mean, I can't take credit for it. It was his vision, and I'm just kind of happy to be along for the ride.
Yeah.
And I think we're fishing out of kayaks, but a lot of the stuff translates over. So it's
Absolutely.
guys that just like to bass fish out of, whether it's a boat or a bank fish, a lot of the stuff I feel like carries over. We're all doing the same thing. It's just a little bit different, some nuance to it.
Yeah, I'm standing, you're sitting, right? No, I'm just kidding. I know a lot of kayaks you
I,
can stand in as well, but
I definitely, the bait we're getting ready to talk about, I like to stand when I'm
yeah,
throwing it.
absolutely. So for, a lot of people who tune in here are probably pretty serious fishermen and they know what a D-bomb is. But for those who might be new to fishing that are joining this show and tuning in, what is a D-bomb?
D-bomb's it's a creature bait. I'd call it a beaver style bait, similar to your original. I think was the Reaction Innovations beaver, but it's a little bit different. It's there's a bunch of them on the market. This one, it's I think it's neat. It's been around for, I want to say it's 12 years now. This
Yeah.
was, as I understand it, it was the first bait that John designed when he started Missile, and it was kind of it worked out great. I know Ish Monroe. I remember watching Bassmaster when he went down on Okeechobee. I think it was like the bait had literally just been created, and Ish went down there and won a Bassmaster flipping. I guess it was reeds down there, and just catching giant fish. So it's been around for a little while, and it's one of the neat things about it. I think is the plastic. And I guess if you've got guys that are listening, I'll show it off and I'll try to describe it.
Yeah.
It's beaver style bait, but it's kind of unique. It's almost like a ringworm, or those old what's it, zipper worms, where
Oh,
it's
yeah,
got
yeah.
ribs all the way around it. I don't know if that's going to show up on my little
Now, what do those
webcam at
ribs
all.
do for the bait? Like, why are the ribs so important?
I think it slows it down a little bit. You've got water. It's catching the water, and I'm not a scientist. I can't pretend to know all the
Hmm.
exactly how to describe it, other than it kind of slows it down. It gives it a little more presence, I think, in the water. But it's basically just kind of a flat, thin bait. It's very soft, and this plastic that they use is I think the term that John uses is neutrally buoyant. So your stuff like a Senko is heavy and full of salt. I think the Strike King's Perfect plastics are similar. You
Mhm.
can throw a weightless bait out there and it's going to sink at a pretty good clip. This, if you set the hook, you tear one up, bait comes off. A lot of times you'll see it floating, and I think that helps with the action. It's got a good glide. I think if you just rig it standard, I'm flipping this most of the time. That's what I like to do with it, and it just has kind of a nice little glide. I tend to fish it with lighter weights and early in the year, and just go for that subtle glide. But then your little kickers here will have a lot of action. You don't have to move the bait a whole lot very aggressively to get just some very subtle, alive looking movements.
Yeah, the D-bomb should be a staple in everyone's tackle box. And I forgot to mention this before we brought you on. Everything down below is linked on Omnia. And the cool part about the D-bomb, which is my favorite, they sell them in bulk packs. I think they're like
Hmm.
25 or 50.
Oh, yeah, I
And
got
it
a
says
couple here.
yeah, you cannot beat the bulk pack at all. So if you're going to throw a D-bomb, always get it. You'll save a little bit of money. And on top of it, down below with our code, you can save a little bit more. So, but yeah, love the D-bomb. So,
Mm.
you say you're flipping it. So how are you rigging the D-bomb? Is it Texas rig, Texposed? Are you rigging it other ways as well that other people should know about?
Most of the time I'm exposing it. And it for me it's a 4/0. This is an Eagle Claw hook. I can never remember the name of it, but it's not the Trocar, it's a laser sharp. But it's just a standard kind of EWG. But I like the way with the bend is the hook just sits right flush,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just barely stick the hook point into those ribs, so it pops out very easily. And you can bury it in there if you're fishing some real thick, nasty stuff. But I like to make it as easy as possible for that hook to pop out into that fish. If I get if I'm out of position and I get a weak hook set, I like having that set up to where I still get a good, get good penetration and that fish doesn't come off. But
Absolutely.
it's when it comes to weights, I mentioned I like to go on the lighter side. You can definitely go heavy. I know guys that punch with it, but for me, I'm early in the year. I'm going somewhere with 3/16 about it as light as I'll go. I'll throw a quarter, 5/16. I think is what I got on here, and that's my go-to. When I first pick this up, typically I'm going to start throwing this. I really like it when the water starts getting around 60 degrees. And you can definitely catch them before that. But for me, it's just I have a ton of confidence when you start getting around the spawn. And those fish are up shallow. It's just a real subtle bait, and it just gets a lot of bites that time of year.
Now, do you ever
I'll
use
put
it
a
as like
bobber stop.
bobber stop above the
Yeah,
weight?
I like them. I know there's people that say it impacts the action, and I feel like with those lightweights, it doesn't really matter. Those fish will hang on to that thing. When I'm practicing for tournaments, I'll have those fish hold on for a long time, and you're trying to shake them off. And I mean, I've hooked so many of them trying to shake them off with baits like that I've gotten to where practicing for a tournament. If I don't want to stick them, I'm using a screw lock just because otherwise they won't let it go a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, that's when you have the right bait for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all about pegging my weights. Like doesn't matter what I am. For skipping it into cover, like it helps a ton. If you want a free swinging weight, in my opinion, just throw a Carolina rig.
There you
So
go. I
most
got a
of the time,
question for you. Do you cinch it right down the peg
yeah,
right up against the weight?
I
Okay.
usually do. Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm also like weird about it. You know how you have the eye on the hook open there a little bit. I
Yeah.
almost try to bury that eye, and I want to just slam together.
Okay.
And I
So you're
think
using pliers to crimp it more or
no,
less,
no, no,
or
no. Like I put the bait further over that eye on the hook, so
okay.
the bullet weight actually hits the nose of the plastic. And I find when I'm flipping it in heavier vegetation, it doesn't get hung up as much, so it slides through a little bit easier.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
I
but I
give it a
mean,
little bit of space usually with that bobber stop. I don't cinch it right on it, but I mean there's so many guys that that don't use a bobber stop at all, or that'll put it even further up or cinch it. I
yeah,
mean everybody catches fish. I don't know that there's a right way to do it.
I don't think there is. I think it's just whatever you have confidence in. And that's the best part about bass fishing is you're going to get bit if you have any idea where to stick your bait, right? And having confidence in what you're throwing. So, do you ever use it as like a jig trailer or like a chatterbait trailer?
Chatterbait, yes. Chatterbait, it's
Vertical
I'll
or
show a
horizontal?
modification. I go vertical, so I'm turning it up, that away, and I'll actually take these pinchers and rip these off, the little side pinchers,
Yep.
and the bait, it's so there's some other baits. I think the rodent was one of them that it comes with these main two kickers stuck together, and you can decide whether you want to separate them. They're not stuck together on this missile D bomb, but you do have those side flaps, and if you take the side flaps off, it actually turns this into like a kicking action. And it's not going to thump like a rage car or something that's real aggressive. You don't thump, but you
Yeah.
get a very nice little swimming action when you're lifting it. And I do that anytime I'm throwing in the back of the chatterbait, and those legs are just gonna, go crazy. This
Undulate
this
like
is
crazy.
hmm
I
and
can't
this
do that with
this
my fingers. It just doesn't work.
it's I don't know what it is like that. This was I'll use the little one as a trailer sometimes too. I mean,
Oh, I always
I've
forget about the baby
I've got a
D-bomb.
little one. It's there's definitely a difference. The one, I mean, you're going to get more lift with the big one. Even if you want a lot of lift, you want to keep it super shallow. Going horizontal is going to help. But even with it vertical like this, it's going to have more lift. The other trailer, I like a spunk shad. If I'm that's kind of my go-to. But if I'm fishing overgrass, shallow, I want a big profile. Fish are eating bluegill. I'm someplace
Your
where I know there's
bluegill spawn.
some big fish. Oh yeah, this thing on there vertical is the way to go.
I like
But
it.
yeah, that's chatterbait is it's a sneaky, and like I said, the little one too. And I'll do the same thing. Take those little side pinchers off the little one, and I'll use that on a full size jackhammer. It's not going to have quite as much lift, but I'm still going to get a lot of action. I'll just play around. I don't know that there's a right way and a wrong way. A lot of it's just playing around with it until you figure out what's working that day.
It's fair enough. So, there's an extensive amount of colors in the D-bomb. So, like, if you had to choose like 3 or 5 colors, what 3 to 5 colors would you choose, and when would you throw each particular color?
There's definitely a ton of colors, and I'm such a bait nerd that I've probably bought and tried all of them. But if I can only have a few, and that's honestly a decision that comes up kayak fishing a lot, is I can't take everything. I can't take every color of every bait. But I mean, it's boring, but green pumpkin, it's the staple in everything. A lot of times that's where I'll start.
Yeah.
So I have to have green pumpkin. This other one, I don't know how well it's going to show up. It's called Superbug. For me, it's very much a toss up between this and green pumpkin. You'll notice it's kind of a black blue on one side, and then the green pumpkin on the other. So it's just a two-tone. There's other companies. I think the Jackhammer, they make a color that I can't remember what they call it, but it's a similar look to that, where it's got some dark in it, but then on the other side it's got green pumpkin. It's like the two best colors, and they're just sort of rolled together.
Hmm.
Bruiser is another. I think that's probably the top selling color.
Which is what, like a
one of
green
them.
pumpkin, black and blue?
Yeah, it's more of a blue versus a. I don't think I brought that particular color, but it's more of an electric kind of blue and a black.
Got it.
This is more the green pumpkin with the. It's almost a June bug, but it's kind of a blue on that darker side.
Well, I like that.
But yeah, for me, Bruiser definitely works. I pretty much just throw this one instead of Bruiser. That's one decision where I could just eliminate bringing one color. Other colors I like.
You've got to be a fan of GP3.
I do like that.
It's like
it's
the
kind
only
of
one I ever throw.
Is it really?
I love GP3. I just like purple. So like,
yeah, it's got and really it's green pumpkin, but you've got a little bit more translucence in the kickers.
Yeah,
I think it's a lighter color, and that purple, it's pretty. It's definitely a fish catcher.
I like that one a lot on like variable like cloud and sun days with like gin clear water, but not like the glacial clear, like blue green clear. I want it in like a tannic clear water. So like there's very particular time I will pick up a D-bomb, and it's in certain lakes.
Gotcha.
Certain water color and vegetation type, and that's when I'll go to a D-bomb. I'm a bait nerd, so like I have like 5 different creature baits I like to flip, and they're all particular to like each body of water.
It took me so long to kind of get away from that, because I would have like a whole bunch of different brands, like everybody's creature style bait, everybody's beaver style bait, and it's just too much stuff, and it all kind of does the same thing.
And part when I know I'm going to a said lake, I pull out the ones for the other lakes and I only put that one in, and
Okay,
it's only one color. Like each bait I use is like one color.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm kind of wild in that regards for whatever reason.
Well, this one, candy grass, it's called. It's not going
Ooh.
to show up real well, but
Is that like
it's
their play on, was it sprayed grass?
yeah, basically the same thing. It's real translucent. You've got kind of a watermelon green. It's got some purple. It's got purple fleck, green fleck. It's to me that if you haven't thrown that, that's one I would try up your way around grass. Anytime it's clean water, I'll sight fish with that when it's real clear water.
Hmm.
I'll give some juice. One of my favorite things to do with this in dirtier water. You know the water's in that 60 to say 65, and those fish are spawning. I'll just flip this and dead stick it. Basically pitch it out there, something that looks like a stump or somewhere where you get maybe a piece of standing timber with another piece laying horizontal. Just anything that looks like there could be a bed there. I'll pitch to it and just let it hit bottom. Maybe give it one twitch and then just kill it. And there's times where they'll hit a fall or as soon as it hits off the bottom, and then there's other times where it's 10 or 15 seconds. That fish is, if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden it's you reel up and the fish is at the boat already swimming under.
Oh,
So it's my favorite thing to use as kind of a blind fishing bait when I know they're bedding. So I'm going to have a bunch of them with me when I go down to Florida here in a couple of weeks. But I've done real well on Lake Fork with that. Just the same areas. Like we were down there, what was it, 2021, and the water was cleaner. I could actually see the fish on beds, and I was using more your green pumpkins. But then went down the next year, and they were doing some kind of repair on the dam. The lake was 6 foot low. All the stuff that I had fished was high and dry, so you kind of back off to that 2 to 4 foot depth, and I would pitch at every single stump, every single tree in these little backwater pockets, and you catch a lot of fish, and you catch some big fish too.
that sounds like
It's just
fun. Sign me up.
it's
Besides,
yeah, it's a
besides the alligators or
confidence deal.
crocodiles, they got alligators at Fork, right?
They do, but it's not like Florida. At least
Okay.
maybe it's just I've only been there in the springtime and it's not crazy, but to me, Florida's got a whole lot more of them.
Yeah, they'll get you in Florida.
Or your little dog.
Yeah, run
Don't
away.
walk your dog by the lake.
Oh man, yeah, no thanks. I don't have a dog, but I feel like I would be very sad if my dog got ate by an alligator. So I'll pass on that one. So let's dive into your setup, right? Like rod, reel, line. Are you braid guy, braid to fluoro? So walk us through the whole flipping setup for what you mostly fish a D-bomb with.
For me, it's I guess that's mostly flipping, and I like a 7.4. You can definitely use longer, but for me, I like a little bit shorter rod in the kayak. I do try to stand, and if you're comparing it to a bass boat, you've got a foot and a half, 2 foot from the deck of your bass boat to the water. You got a little more space for if you're sticking the rod, down towards the water and doing a little underhand pitch. You're not sticking the rod in the water. You got a little bit less space, particularly in my kayak. And I'm up in backwater stuff a lot, up under overhanging limbs, trying to put it in places where the boats can't go a lot of times, so that having just a little bit shorter rod, I like. And I feel like the 7.4 heavy it's still got enough power. I can lean on them, get them coming towards me. I can still swing them. But that 7.4, for me, it's ideal. And I know there's other guys that use the exact same stuff they do bass boat, your 7.6. But to me, that's just the right deal. I'm typically throwing it on a 7-to-1. I'll experiment sometimes with an 8-to-1, and maybe it's just the brand reel that I have, but it feels like I don't have the amount of power when I go to 8-1. That 7-to-1, it's like, yeah, with the 8-to-1, I can take up the line quicker, but something about, I just feel like it's not, I can't horse them quite the way I can with a 7-to-1.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense, especially if you're fishing grass, because the 8-to-1 just can't the way that it's designed, from my understanding, is the gears are smaller to make it turn faster, right? I think is the way it is. As like
Okay.
a 6.3, the gears are bigger. So when you start to like get on it, it actually takes longer or something for the reel, or like the gears will actually slip sometimes because they're so small. And I don't know the exact engineering of it, but that's why you have more power when you go into a lower gear ratio reel because there's more um, torque where the gears hit and there's more grab, is from
Gotcha.
my understanding.
Yeah, I have no idea sort of how they work. I know the times that I've tried to take them apart and clean them, I've messed them all up, and I can
Yeah,
never get them back
I
together.
send them to someone else at this point.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like 7 to 1, and I flip a lot with 17. It's a little bit
fluoro.
lighter, but fluoro. I can't think punching. I will go to braid, but I'm almost always just sort of standard flipping with fluoro.
Hmm.
Uh, 17 I do a lot, and I'll do 20 a lot. You can go up to 25. I don't think it really makes a difference. Um, but I'm staying kind of in that ballpark. Down in Florida, I might beef up to the 25 just because there's a possibility of catching that fish of a lifetime,
Or a gator.
um, or gator. But
Um,
it's yeah, I try to stay in that ballpark. And 17, I mean, yeah, you'll break it off. You put it in the right kind of stuff. I don't think we have. I don't deal with zebra mussels kind of the way that I think you guys might up there. But
no, probably not.
sharp rocks, pieces of I've broken fish off on like a piece of metal in the river it's like a big beam that's wedged up against something, and the fish just runs up against it. Um, and there's not much you can do about those. I don't think the 25 will make a ton of difference. And I feel like I have maybe a little bit better feel with the lighter line. I don't know if that's just me, or if it's just something in my head, but I feel like I get a little bit better sensitivity with the 17. But 17-20, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, and every brand too, like if you use different brands of fluorocarbon, every brand has different line diameter. And that's something you
Mm,
always have to pay attention to because some 20s are actually like 25, and some 20s are like the diameter of 15. So always pay attention to the line size diameter when you choose the fluorocarbon line because they'll all be different. Especially when you start getting above like 10-pound tests. It's kind of crazy.
yeah, that's juice there. It's good
Yeah.
info.
You ever pay attention to that?
Sometimes, but I have used the same line for
What do
I
you
bet
like?
it's actually Vicious. It's called Vicious. I don't
Yeah.
it I remember when it came out, there were a bunch more of the Elite Series guys that were using it, and then I don't know that there's I think Brandon Lester, Fletcher Shryock, those are the two big ones anymore. But I remember there were quite a few big names. I think Swindle, a bunch of other guys were throwing it when it came out, and I just remember it was cheaper than everything else. And I was fresh out of school, and I was like, you know
Yeah.
what, I can buy bulk spools of this for cheaper than everything else, and I've
Nothing
just
wrong
kind
with
of
that.
I've gotten used to how it feels, and I don't want to mess with it and introduce more variables than I have to
Yeah.
with
I
with
like
switching between brands.
That's good. I mean, if you're comfortable and the quality is there, stick with it until the quality goes, and then you have to find something else. But no, I've actually heard a lot of good things about Vicious, especially like the no fade braid. I think they have.
Believe
If
it or not, I haven't tried that. I
hmm,
bought. I think I lived up on the or near the Potomac, Northern Virginia, for many years, and I had so much of their original, like the bulk spools of 65, like 1,500 yards of it. I had a couple of those.
no,
I
too
had
much.
50. Yeah, it's like I couldn't go through it fast enough. So like I want to try that stuff and see just how it works.
Yeah,
I've heard the same thing that it's good, but I'm like I've got so much of the stuff still that I don't want to. It's like I
yeah,
want to use it. So
absolutely.
maybe I'm too cheap, but
Yeah. I mean, braid. If you flip it on reels, braid will last 2 or 3 seasons. So I
yeah.
think that's the best part about the braid. So, Justin, before I let you go here, is there anything else you want to touch on? I know you did one modification. Are there any other like mods that you can think of that are good for our viewers to know about the D bomb, or is that pretty much like set the good one?
That's my favorite. And I mentioned that I do that on the chatterbait trailer. I can't remember if I mentioned that I do it, flipping it too to get that different action. Um, but that's kind of my other deal, and it just sort of changes that fall rate.
Especially
You get
like
a
you do that more when you punch because then it kind of goes through the grass a little bit easier because it's more streamlined.
It can, believe it or not, I don't punch the big one very much.
Hmm.
I know there's a bunch of guys that do. I think that's if I don't want to speak for them, but from what I've seen, that's Ish's deal is punching this thing through grass out in California. Um, but for me, there's some other missile stuff that I like a little bit better for it. I will occasionally use the little bitty one. Like I'm trying to get away with the smallest weight possible, and I mean the kayaks anymore are pretty stable, but I still feel like I can't get the same type of hook set that I could get standing on the deck of a bass boat. There's a little bit less stability. I'm trying to go. I'm trying to get a bait through and get away from using a great big old 2 ounce. I've used them before, and I've caught fish with the jumbo weights.
And
But
if that wave comes flying back at you to kayak, you can't really just jump out of the way because then you have to worry about falling in. So you're
oh
probably
yeah,
taking it.
you comes back at you, and you stick your rod up there. It happens to hit your rod. Now your rod's busted.
Yeah.
I know a dude. We had him on. I think one of our first episodes. I think it was our first guest, Adam Reiser, had a crazy story where he had one come back and hit him in the mouth and like jacked up his teeth off a big piece of
Tungsten
tungsten.
is not fun.
So I try to stay, 3/4 ounce to half ounce for punching, and I feel like I know it works for some people, but I have other stuff that I like for it. And I try to, I try to, I guess, work out as many of these things and limit myself, because if I don't, I end up like I used to be with the 30-liter dry bag, just stuffed full of plastics, all different brands,
Never
and
good.
they just dump it in the floor of the kayak, and it's just a mess all day, and it's not a smart way to fish. So I try to streamline, and I'll experiment every once in a while, but I've kind of gotten to where I've got little things that I like, kind of like you were saying, you got your one color for your different lake or your different bait. I don't have it maybe quite that dialed in, but I've got
I wouldn't say it's dialed. It's
particular
just my
tools.
thoughts, and it works. So,
Hey,
but
that's what matters.
yeah, for me, like it doesn't mean I'm winning, but at least I'm catching some fish.
Oh,
So,
you put your clients on a lot of fish.
yeah. Oh, that's smallmouth. Those are easy. Like, no, it's a different animal going from a tournament angler to a guide. I will just leave it at that point, and we could have conversations about that later because it's crazy if you ever want to get into guiding. The expectations are unreal, but it's fun. It's definitely rewarding, and it's a lot of hard work, and a lot of people don't realize how much work actually goes into it. So
Yeah, I can only imagine. I know I can be lazy at times, and places that I know where there's fish, I tend to go back to those same places. It's I don't go out and look for new fish as often as I know I ought to, but you don't have a choice. Like you burn your fish, and then
yeah,
you're having a
on my days off, I don't fish very much. I just idle and look for more fish.
looking for.
And I'm like, if I don't know if they're bass or not, then I might make a cast. And if I catch them, I'm like, okay, it's a good spot.
Oops.
On to the next one. Yep. Oops, I just caught a 6-pounder.
I guess it was a bass. I didn't know.
I remember my first ever guide trip. I went out practicing for it, and I ended up catching like a 6.5-pounder the day before, and I'm like, yikes! Felt pretty bad about that one because the next day I don't think we caught one over 4. So I was like, you should have been here yesterday.
You got to stick some though. Like for me, if I practice too much and don't set the hook at all in practice, like the times that I've tried to do that, it's like I start to get burned out and frustrated, and just my head's not in the right place because I'm not enjoying it.
Like I don't get me wrong, I fish on guide trips, so quite a bit, but I'm always experimenting with like different baits, colors, something completely different to see if there's a better bite going on or if we're doing the right thing. Like if I pick something up and I catch a bunch of 2-pounders and you're catching 3.5, 4s, you're probably doing the better thing. So maybe now I should try a different color of what you're doing to see if it gets a bigger bite. So
do you ever get clients that just like setting the hook and are all about those 2-pounders and don't care about the? Okay.
Oh yeah, I got a couple spots. I'm like, do you want to go try and catch like 5 or 6 giants, or do you want to go catch 102-pounders? And they're like, oh, let's go catch 102-pounders. I'm like, all right, let's have a time. Like, I just sit on spot lock for 6-7 hours and just wear them thin on a swim bait. So
wow,
yeah, doesn't
have to experience.
Erie's fun when it's on.
Yeah, that's a bucket list place for me. Is I've never been on any of the Great Lakes. St. Clair was the closest I've been.
It's a great lake. It's connected to two. Yeah, it's a big lake. So, well, Justin, I appreciate you coming on here. I don't want to cut it short, but no, I appreciate you coming on. I look forward to having more because I think you're going to become our missile baits guy. So, if there's any missile bait stuff, we will have you on to talk about that, unless John wants to take your place for one of them. But yeah, it's no big deal. If not, like, we appreciate you taking the time to come on here today, and we'll chat soon, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Of course. You have a good night. Well, good day, right? Or night, whatever time people are listening to this, and we'll chat soon. All right, perfect. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning into this week's episode here on the Lure Lab. We appreciate it as always. And like I stated earlier in the episode down below, over at Omnia, the bulk packs, regular packs of missile baits, D-bombs, big and small, the baby D-bomb will be listed down below. So make sure you hit that description if you're looking for some D-bombs, and there's a discount code down there as well, so you can save some money on it. But if you're new here listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment down below if you enjoy fishing a D-bomb, or maybe even name what your favorite flipping plastic bait is. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform that allows you to leave a review, please do that. And stay tuned for next week's episode on Saturday, and we will see you then.